Before diving into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next mind-bending historical revelation. Trust me, what you're about to discover will change how you see ancient history forever. The year was 532 AD. Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, was burning. Mobs filled the streets. Buildings collapsed under flames that seemed to touch the sky. But the most dangerous place in the entire city wasn't in the streets. It wasn't in the markets or the palace halls. It was hidden beneath the city itself, in vast underground chambers that even Roman soldiers had refused to enter. An old historian in Istanbul once said something that would echo through centuries. The Romans conquered the world, but they feared what lay beneath Constantinople. They had good reason to be afraid. What could possibly terrify the greatest military force the world had ever seen? What secrets hid in those Byzantine arenas that were so disturbing that even the legendary Roman Empire wanted nothing to do with them? The answer would shake everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization. To understand this story, we need to go back to where it all began. When the Romans built their military empire, they created amphitheaters as symbols of power. The Colosseum in Rome could hold 50,000 people. These were places where battles happened, where warriors fought, where crowds cheered for blood and victory. The Romans loved these arenas. They built them in every city they conquered. They were temples of entertainment and power. But in Constantinople, something was different. When Byzantine Emperor Constantine built his great capital around 330 AD, he inherited Roman traditions but added something uniquely Byzantine to them. The Byzantines weren't like the Romans. They were more sophisticated, more complex, more mysterious. They took the Roman arena concept and twisted it into something darker, something more purposeful, something that made even hardened Roman soldiers deeply uncomfortable. The primary Byzantine arena wasn't just for entertainment. Historical records that survive tell us it had been designed for something much more specific. It was called the Hippodrome, but beneath it lay a network of chambers and tunnels that the common people never knew existed. Stone passages carved centuries earlier, rooms built specifically for purposes that historians only recently began to understand. The Byzantine Empire had a problem that the Romans hadn't fully solved. They had religious conflicts. They had political enemies. They had people who threatened the empire's stability from within. And they needed places to deal with these threats in ways the public couldn't see, couldn't question, couldn't interfere with. This is where the underground arenas came in. Imagine being a Roman commander in the year 410 AD. You've conquered dozens of cities. You've seen things that would make ordinary people collapse in fear. You've walked through blood-stained amphitheaters and stood unmoved while thousands died around you. You've built your entire identity around being fearless. Then, you're ordered to the Byzantine arena beneath Constantinople. Historical accounts describe what happened next in fragmented pieces, but when you put them together, they tell a terrifying story. Roman commanders and soldiers were invited to witness a demonstration of Byzantine military techniques and strategies. It sounded like an honor. It sounded like knowledge worth acquiring. What they found instead changed them forever. The first chamber was enormous, larger than anything the Romans had built. The walls were carved from living rock, hundreds of feet underground. There was no natural light. The only illumination came from thousands of oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across carved stone walls. The air was thick with moisture and something else, something that made even seasoned warriors feel uneasy. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, the Romans began to see what had been carved into those walls. Not murals of victories or battles. Not images of gods or emperors. Instead, they saw intricate maps, geographical representations of every corner of the known world. Architectural plans for cities they had never heard of. Strategic fortifications designed with mathematical precision that shouldn't have been possible in this ancient era. But the maps weren't why they were truly afraid. The chambers beneath Constantinople were designed with a purpose so advanced, so calculated, that it revealed something disturbing about Byzantine intelligence and planning. These weren't places of idle entertainment. They were command centers, strategy rooms, places where the Byzantine leadership had planned and organized information in ways that the Romans, masters of military organization, didn't fully understand. The walls contained written records, Thousands of them. Names, dates, locations, strategic information, all coded and organized in systems that took the Romans hours to even begin to decipher. It became clear that the Byzantines had been building a network of information gathering that spanned the entire empire. They knew things about Roman military movements, about their own citizens, about threats to power, that should have been impossible to know. The realization hit the Roman commanders like a physical blow. The Byzantines weren't just a political or military power. They were an intelligence power. They had systems in place that were decades ahead of anything Rome had developed. But there was something even more disturbing waiting deeper in the chambers. As the Romans were led further underground, they encountered rooms that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. Empty chambers with chairs arranged in circles. Tables with strange instruments. Walls with observation holes that allowed unseen watchers to study people in adjacent rooms. Doors that locked from the outside only. Chains embedded in stone. When they asked what these chambers were for, the Byzantine guide simply smiled and said nothing. Historical records suggest that rumors began to spread among the Roman forces. Whispers about what might have happened in those rooms. Stories about prisoners, about interrogations, about methods of extracting information that were so cruel that even Romans, who thought they had seen every form of human violence, couldn't stomach them. The truth is, we may never know exactly what occurred in those underground chambers. But we know enough from fragmentary historical accounts to understand that the Byzantines had created a system of control, of information gathering, of psychological manipulation that went beyond anything Rome had imagined. More importantly, we know what happened to the Romans who encountered these arenas. They went silent. They didn't talk about what they'd seen. And when word spread among the Roman military about the underground chambers, recruitment to Constantinople stopped. Roman soldiers requested transfers away from Byzantine territory. Rome's hold on Byzantine regions began to weaken. Some historians believe this wasn't accidental. The Byzantines may have intentionally shown these chambers to Roman commanders specifically to psychologically weaken Rome's military presence. If so, it was a brilliant strategy. Fear is a more powerful weapon than swords. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn that changes everything. In the 1930s, archaeologists working beneath Constantinople made discoveries that reframed our entire understanding of these mysterious chambers. What they found revealed that we had misunderstood the Byzantine arenas for centuries. The carved maps on the walls weren't evidence of Byzantine dominance. They were something far more important. The Byzantines weren't creating instruments of oppression. They were preserving knowledge. The chambers weren't designed primarily as intelligence centers or torture rooms. They were designed as archives, libraries, repositories of information meant to survive whatever catastrophes might come. When Rome fell, when civilizations collapsed, when knowledge was lost to time and conquest, the Byzantine underground preserved something precious: understanding, historical knowledge, scientific concepts, architectural innovations. All carefully organized and preserved in ways that they could survive centuries. The instruments that the Romans had found so threatening, many were actually scientific tools, measuring devices, calculation instruments, tools for studying mathematics, geography, and engineering with precision that wouldn't be seen again until the Renaissance. The chairs arranged in circles weren't for torture chambers. They were for scholarly gatherings. For teachers to instruct students in knowledge that the Byzantine leaders believed was too important to be lost. The observation holes weren't for surveillance of prisoners. They were for senior scholars to observe and evaluate younger students, to guide their learning without interrupting their thought process. The sealed doors and chains? Upon closer examination, they were there for preservation. To keep environmental conditions stable for ancient texts. To protect knowledge from moisture, from pests, from the chaos of the world above. The Byzantines hadn't been building instruments of darkness. They had been building something far more noble, a sanctuary for human knowledge during a time when civilization itself was fragmenting and falling apart. This realization struck historians with tremendous force. The Byzantines had understood something that Rome, for all its military might, had missed. They understood that real power wasn't in force or conquest. Real power was in the preservation of knowledge, in making sure that human understanding survived so that future generations could build on it. What can we learn from this story about the Byzantine arenas that even Romans feared to enter? First, we learn that fear is often based on misunderstanding. The Romans weren't afraid of the chambers because they were evil or dark. They were afraid because they didn't understand them. What seemed threatening was actually noble. What appeared to be oppression was actually preservation. When we fear something we don't understand, we often miss its true value. Second, we learn that real strength doesn't come from military power or conquest. The Byzantines outlasted Rome not because they had stronger armies, but because they had a deeper understanding of what truly matters: knowledge, preservation, continuity. Rome conquered the world through force, but the Byzantines preserved civilization through wisdom. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we learn something about human nature itself. The Byzantines understood that even in times of chaos and collapse, even when empires are falling and the world seems to be ending, knowledge matters. Learning matters. The work of preserving understanding for future generations matters more than any single person's power or glory. There's a profound lesson here for our modern world. We live in an age of information, yes, but we also live in an age of fragmentation. Our knowledge is scattered across countless platforms. We've lost the sense of preserving understanding as a sacred responsibility. We've lost the understanding that knowledge preserved is more powerful than knowledge weaponized. The Byzantine arenas teach us that the things worth fearing are often things we don't yet understand. And the things worth protecting are often not our military strength or our wealth, but our collective memory, our shared understanding, our preserved knowledge. An old historian once said, "Rome conquered the world, but Constantinople preserved it." And that preservation happened not in the glorious halls above ground, but in the humble, carefully organized chambers beneath the city, maintained by people who understood that true power comes from the humble, patient work of preserving what matters most. The Romans feared those underground arenas because on some level, even they understood this truth. They realized that the Byzantines had discovered something more powerful than military might, and that knowledge terrified them far more than any army ever could. So the next time you feel afraid of something you don't understand, remember the Byzantine arenas. Remember that what seems threatening might actually be protecting something beautiful. Remember that the deepest strength often comes not from conquest, but from preservation. And remember that the greatest power in the world isn't the power to destroy, but the power to preserve, to remember, and to pass on understanding to those who come after us. If this story has changed how you see ancient history, smash that like button and subscribe now so you never miss another mind-bending historical revelation. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered that something you feared was actually something worth protecting? Your story might become our next video. Hit that notification bell now, and we'll see you in the next one.